Hello again, welcome back. We're going to continue our discussion of web components. In the last video, we made a simple, like the simplest possible hello world web component, right? So we have a tag here called myElement, and it generates a web component that actually sets the text that appears within the web component. So we see it here, and it also styles the text. And for us, the text is just the words hello world, right? So it's not super exciting. When we left off, I left a couple small challenges here that were, set the text to a random color, make the text random text, and then maybe add some new styles, right? So let's try and apply those right now and see how you might solve these, right? So first of all, for the random color, there's a couple ways to get a random color. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to make actually, let's just make a regular variable because maybe we don't need to use it more than once. We'll just say color here like this. And I'm going to set color equal to, actually, let me change that. I'm going to say const hue equals, and you'll see why I'm going to do this in a moment. I'm going to say math.random, right? So in JavaScript, math_random returns a random number between 0 and 1. So in other words, this should be a number like 0.0769, it'll look something like that, right? Or it might be 0.39, something like this, right? So it'll be anything between 0 and 1.0, anywhere in between there. If I understand correctly, it'll never be exactly 0 and it'll never be exactly 1. So it might be, like this, right? Okay. So anyway, so how do I make a color out of this? Well, if we used the HSL color, hue, saturation, lightness, we can determine the hue of a color by providing a number between 0 and 360. So with HSL colors, the hue or the color, right, of a color is that's different from the lightness and the darkness of a color, right? The saturation and the value, right? Right, like hue is the actual color, right? So to generate a number between 0 and 360, we can take this number and multiply by 360, right? So if this is between 0 and 1, if we multiply by 360, we get a number between 0 and 360, right? And so this 360 number is kind of how HSL colors work. They divide the color wheel into a range of 0 to 360 degrees, and all the colors are spread around the color wheel. So now our color can be a string. We can say HSL, and this is how you would use it in CSS. So I would write the CSS property exactly like I'm doing it here. Let me actually zoom in on that a little bit. Maybe that'll be easier to read. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the hue here, the saturation here, and the lightness here. So for us, the hue is going to be our hue variable. Okay, so that should be a random color value. Saturation is how much color we have, and I want 100% of the color, right? If you pull the color out, then the color value becomes gray. Okay, so if you take, if saturation is 0, no matter what you put here, you're going to get a value of gray. Okay, some range of gray. The lightness value determines how much or how light or dark the color is. It's like how much white or how much black has been added to the color. So with a lightness of 50%, you get the color with no added white or black, right? If you go less than 50%, it's like we're adding black to the color and the color gets darker. And if we go above 50%, it's like we're adding white to the color, like white paint or something, and we're getting a color that's lighter in value, okay? So anyway, so now I've got my random color set up between these two variables here. We could have combined all this into, like I could have taken this and just put it inside here if I wanted, but just to keep things short and easy, like I'll do this on 2 lines. And now I want to apply this as a style to my to my my element, right? So I can say, how about this dot text dot style, style dot color equals color, right? So there we go. So I got hello world in green, I got it in yellow, I got it in kind of a lime green, and every time I refresh the page, the color is going to be random, right? So here I have not a super useful web component, but I have a tag that can generate, you know, a fixed text, and it can generate any, like, a random style applied to that text, right? So, you know, this is maybe, you know, we're kind of hinting at the possibilities with web components, though this one isn't super useful. Let's try doing some random text, right? So, you know, I'll just make this easy. I'll say, how about const word equals, and I'm gonna say math.random, right? And we'll use random again, and we'll say, you know, how about if math.random is less than 0.5 question mark, then my word string is going to be foo colon, this is if in case this is 0.5 or greater, then it will be bar, okay? And then I'm going to take the word here and we'll set it as the inner HTML. So actually I have the inner HTML setting here, so maybe I'll move that below this line, and we can take our word and assign it here. So it looks like it said bar all times. So there's bar, foo, and bar, right? Foo, bar, and foo. Foo, bar, bar. Foo, bar, bar. Bar, bar, bar. Anyway, okay. So enough of that. So that's kind of working. We got our random word there. So we did these first two, and you know, you could add some more styles. So here's the trick, right? All of the regular CSS styles that you have all exist in JavaScript, okay? And you can set them by setting the style property on any HTML element, okay? So this text element is a div, that's an HTML element. It has a style property, and you can assign any CSS style to it. The trick, though, is the names of the styles are different. So when you have the style and it's called color in CSS, you know, let's put the CSS here in this line, right? And first, and then we'll follow it with the JavaScript. You know, we'll say, how about JS version of this would be the same, right? Because you know, it's just the word color and we use it again. In this case, though, font size looks like this in CSS, and this hyphen doesn't fly in JavaScript because it's an operator that means subtract, right? So so this would not work as a JavaScript variable name, right? Or identifier name, right? So in the JavaScript version, what we're going to do is just convert this to camel case. So I would say font size, remove the hyphen, and then uppercase the next word. So let's try another one. Maybe, you know, anytime this element displays, I want a border on it and some padding, right? So let's do this dot text dot style, and then I want to set the, I'm going to do it, we could do it all in one line with the border property, but why don't we just set each of the border properties separately just so we can do it. So I'm going to say border width, right? Because it would have been border dash width, okay? So I'm going to just change it to camel case, and we'll say border width equals, and since we include the unit, we're going to need to put this in quotation marks, right? So I'll put this here, and we'll say, how about 2 pixels, right? And then we'll have to say this dot, and we don't get the border yet, right? It won't show up unless we also include the style, right? So anytime you get a border to show up in CSS, you have to set the border, and then you have to set the style, or the width and the style. So I'm going to say text dot style, and then I'm going to do border style like this, right? And our style is going to be solid, right? And there we've got our borders. So and this would have been border style in CSS, right? So there we go. So we solved all those problems. Let's try a tougher problem, right? So let's imagine that we wanted to make a brand new web component, okay? So I want a brand new web component, and what I want is I want a web component that has some text, okay? Like it has some text in there, and you can put any text in there. So the idea is I want to get the text that you've typed in between the two tags. And you can do that because my element, so this, in our case, right, will be the element that, that you have extended, okay? So if you say this, you can get the inner HTML. So let me do that right now. So let's do this. Let's say this dot, actually let's console log it. Let's do console log, and we'll say, what is this, right? Now remember, I have 3 of these up here, so it's going to log that 3 times because we have, it'll do it once for each one. And you can see here it logged my element with type value, my element, and my element, right? Okay, so just using the word this inside here means you're referring to yourself. And in our case, we are an HTML element. And if we look down here, we are defining a brand new element called my element. So anytime you have the tag my element, for the code here, in the context of this code, that element is this, okay? Okay, I know it's hard to talk about the word this, because of the semantics, but the keyword this represents the element, right? So if I wanted to find out, how about let's do find the text, right? So if I wanted to find the text, right, that is inside the tags, right? Okay, you can see I have this here, and that text doesn't show up, right? It's still the random text, right? Because we're just displaying the shadow element. Inside, though, we can see that the words exist in there, right? So how do I get to these words, right? Well, if I go down here and I look at logging this, if I just want to see the words, I can say dot inner HTML, right? And you can see it says find the text because I grabbed the text out of there, okay? So the goal now is, now that we know how to get the text from an element, what I want you to do as a challenge is to make the text that's inside the element be the text that you've typed inside the tag, okay? And then what I want you to do is I want you to scramble the letters, okay? Like put them in a different order or something, okay? So anytime you put some text in here, I want you to scramble it. So imagine like we're making a component that always scrambles the text that's inside it. Again, not super useful, but it's kind of hinting at some possibilities, right? So you can give that a try, right? It's important to be able to just use the basic HTML, JavaScript, CSS stuff, right? So once you've mastered that, then you can go ahead and make amazing things, right? So give that a try, stop the video, and then you can give it a try, right? And then I have another challenge that's maybe a little more practical coming up, okay? Okay, so how did you do there? Let's give it a try here, right? I'm gonna get rid of this console log, and then I'm gonna get rid of this random word here, but what I wanna do is I wanna replace it with, the new word. So I'm going to just do a right here, right? So now we'll all say a, but I'm going to replace this with the randomized text, right? So let's do this. Let's make another variable, const, let's say const letters equals this dot inner HTML. Okay, so now we got all the letters. And now what I want to do is I want to convert them into an array. So I'm going to do split, okay? And I'm going to split on the empty string. So if this .inner HTML returns a string, we can call split, and then you can pick a character to split on. And if you pick the empty string, it just splits each letter out into its own, item in the array. So this is now an array of letters, okay? And then what we'll do is we'll sort the letters. So I'm going to say letters.sort, and sort takes a sorting function, right? And this function, if it returns, it actually provides you two of the letters, like we don't know which ones, but it gives us two elements from this array, and it asks the question, hey, does one of them, should it appear before the other or after, or should they not change place? So, essentially it gives you A and B. So this is one letter and this is another letter. And then what you're going to do is you're going to return +1, 0, or -1. So any value greater than 1, it says that A should come first. Any value less than 1, then B should come first. 0, and they don't change place. So actually, I'm just going to cheat here and say math.random times 2 minus 1. I know that looks weird, right? Because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, let's generate a random number between 0 and 2, and then subtract 1. So that means generate a random number between -1 and +1. And so that should sort our letters in kind of a random order. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the letters here, put them here, but I'll need, since they're an array, I'll need to join them together again. And I'm going to join them with a space, or no space actually, like just the empty string. So split and join are kind of similar functions. This turns a string into an array. This takes an array and turns it back into a string. Okay, connects everything back together again. So you can see here when I run the code, this one should have said find, and when I refresh it, it kind of mixes up all the letters, and the same thing here, right? And so you could make a tag here that did, you could write anything here and here. You could write anything here, right? And when I do that, I get a random, arrangement of letters, right? So that's not too bad, right? So we got pretty far there. So hopefully this is giving you a good starting point for kind of some of the things that you can do with a web component. And there's a lot more, right? We're just scratching the surface. So I'm going to stop the video here. Feel free to try and do your own things, maybe do some other things with this. And then in the next video, we're going to move into lifecycle methods and talk about how the lifecycle methods affect our web components. Okay. And again, as always, thanks for watching.